Uniform Commercial Code. The Uniform Commercial Code, UCC, is colorable law. It is not law, but gives the appearance of law and is upheld by the courts as law. This colorable law is known only to judges and licensed attorneys, although it was designed to protect the common people from unscrupulous merchants and bankers. The UCC governs U.S. citizens and negotiable instruments, contracts either in equity, or admiralty, and maritime. Many of the original elements of our judicial system, as authorized by Article 3 of the Constitution, are now dangerously missing. Instead of a jury of our peers, cases are tried by a jury of strangers who are instructed not to judge the law, but just the facts. To be on a jury in a court today, an individual must be a colorable person or a Fourth Amendment U.S. citizen. When you demand your constitutional rights in a court under this colorable law, you'll get all the rights you deserve, the rights of the business world, the Uniform Commercial Code. We, the people, make a huge strategic mistake expecting to get a fair trial and due process based on American law and our Bill of Rights, assuming that our common sense understanding of the common law is available to us. Many times we are not allowed to face our accuser, often a legal fiction in the form of some branch of corporate government. In these cases, we must prove our innocence while the prosecution sits back smugly and complicitly with the judge, as only they are aware that there is now a predetermined presumption of guilt built right into these new laws. Recent statutes have been passed which allow the government to seize and sell immediately the real and personal property and private papers of accused drug dealers before the case even goes to trial. Even more shocking is that now these laws are being used in other cases where the government feels the need to inflict immediate and disabling hardships on the defendant in order to keep him from presenting a valuable defense. Fortunately, these statutes have been declared unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. There are no longer any genuine Article 3 courts except those being formed by dedicated patriots throughout the United States, or USA. The judge no longer have the power and immunity of Article 3 judges, but have only ministerial powers and legislative tribunals as per Article 1 are the territorial courts of Article 4 of the Constitution. Article 3 courts were created by the Constitution and are the legitimate courts of the land based on substance and law. The law passed and the courts created under the exclusive legislative authority of Article 1 are not required to be consistent with the Bill of Rights or the common law. America is no longer a nation of laws, but a petty tyrants operating as bureaucratic tribals. Contractors abroad, building and planning departments. A statutory jurisdiction has been in effect created without constitutional authority. Justice and the common law are not available unless you know how to invoke them. There's a bit of magic, a lot of study and preparation, and a waving of the magic wand of words and citations. As colorable law, the UCC is based on negotiable instruments, a medium of exchange, not based on real substance, paper money, checks, credits, Federal Reserve notes, or other securities. The common law is based on substance, gold and silver, while the Uniform Commercial Code is based on bankruptcy. The Negotiable Instruments Act has in effect bound all corporate entities of government together along with their franchisees in a vast system of commercial agreements. Everyone in the system is a statutory law merchant dealing in negotiable papers under the limited liability of payment of debts. This is what has drastically altered our court system from one under the common law to a legislative, administrative, tribal system of commercial, colorable law based on negotiable papers. This is how U.S. citizens are held to the letter of every statute of federal, state, county, and municipal government, unless they exercise the remedy provided within the UCC. All contracts since the New Deal and the federal bankruptcy of 1933 have been colorable contracts. Ever since America went off the gold standard in 1935 and declared Federal Reserve notes as fiat currency or legal tender, we've been using the colorable consideration of the Federal Reserve notes instead of the gold to negotiate these colorable contracts. The term colorable was changed to commercial, and an unconstitutional statutory jurisdiction was created in the courts to enforce these colorable contracts. This statutory jurisdiction is legislative rather than judicial in nature. Thus, the equity admirable courts are merged with the common law courts to enforce these commercial agreements. This is obviously unconstitutional as it dissolved the independent judicacy and created a jurisdiction not authorized by the Constitution. There is very little in our commercial culture that is not either government-owned, controlled, subsidized. We have been forced into accepting the benefits of discharging our debt with legal tender, rather than paying them with money of real value. Without a legislative payment of debt and contracts based on gold and silver, a system of colorable law was introduced that brings every American into a commercial contract with the corporate government monopoly. Although our unalienable rights cannot be taken from us, we may contract them away at will. All this has been accomplished by carefully orchestrated plans and practices of the Federal Reserve Bank, and through the quiet introduction and implementation of the Uniform Commercial Code in all 48 corporate states and the U.S. possessions. Texas was the last state to adopt the UCC in 1967. Under the UCC, we the people are obligated, as in any commercial agreement, to the terms and conditions of the contract. But we are unaware of the terms of this contract, which are scattered and hidden in millions of pages of regulations, statutes, codes, and ordinance at the federal, state, and local levels. Most of us even unaware that such an agreement exists. The prevailing benefits being given to the American people is the privilege of discharging debt with limited liability instead of actually paying debts with lawful money. You cannot be sued for not paying your debts.